In the year 332 BCE, the world's greatest army thundered south along the Mediterranean coastline. At its helm rode Alexander of Macedon, barely 23, already hailed as the Great. Behind him lay the shattered walls of Tyre and the broken gates of Gaza. Ahead, the fertile expanses of Egypt awaited. Yet just off the beaten coastal track, perched on a rugged hilltop, stood a city that would meet the conqueror not with spears, but with sacred tradition, Jerusalem, the sanctuary of a people who worshipped an unseen God and clung fiercely to an ancient, uncompromising law. A city confronts destiny. By the time Alexander's vanguard crested the limestone ridges of the Shephelah, Jerusalem's leaders had already measured their odds and found them wanting. According to the later account of Josephus, High Priest Jaddua called an emergency council. Persian reinforcements were days late. Jerusalem's alabaster walls could not withstand the relentless assault of Macedonian torsion catapults. Instead of battle cries, Jaddua ordered fasting and prayer. Clad in white linen, the priests processed solemnly. Levites raised silver trumpets. The people kept vigil under the stars. At dawn, the city gates swung open. A shimmering procession filed out, an offering not of arms, but of faith. Traders froze. Sentries stood silent. Even Alexander's scouts halted, their horses stamping nervously. As the young king approached, Josephus tells us he dismounted and bowed before the high priest. His general Parmenion protested. Alexander silenced him, declaring, "I bow not to the priest, but to the God who appeared to me in a dream, promising victory over Persia." Miracle or masterstroke of diplomacy, the outcome was profound. Jerusalem was spared. The city's elders presented their archives, feeding Alexander's appetite for omens, and secured a rare concession: continued freedom to live according to the laws of Moses. Jerusalem had avoided the fate of Tyre not through might, but through reverence and wisdom. Alexander entered the city briefly. He offered a sacrifice, perhaps a libation upon the temple's golden altar, and reaffirmed the Jewish right to self-governance. No Macedonian garrison was stationed in Jerusalem. No statues of Zeus defiled its sacred precincts. Yet even as Alexander marched eastward toward Babylon, he left behind a far subtler legacy than soldiers: Hellenism. Greek art, architecture, philosophy and language moved invisibly alongside the conqueror's armies, infiltrating every city and market in their wake. Merchant scholars brought Athenian ideals into Judea. Architects mapped cities with Hellenistic grids. Bronze coins bearing Alexander's profile jostled with shekels stamped with menorahs in Jerusalem's bazaars. New words seeped into Aramaic speech: agora for marketplace, gymnasium for training ground. Most profoundly, Greek became the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean. For many Jews, especially those living outside Judea in thriving centers like Alexandria, Hebrew began to fade. Through this linguistic shift, Jewish thought engaged more deeply with Greek philosophy, science, and ethics, birthing new interpretations of scripture and law. Yet Hellenism was not just a language, it was a way of life. Athletic contests, theatre performances, political assemblies, philosophical debates, these were the lifeblood of Greek civic life. Some Jews, especially urban elites, embraced these customs wholeheartedly. They adopted Greek names, dressed in Hellenic styles, competed in gymnastic games, and attended Greek dramas. But others recoiled. Rural communities and priestly families saw these innovations as betrayals of the covenant. A growing cultural tension began to split Jewish society, a tension that would eventually give rise to divisions among Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. How much foreign influence could be absorbed without losing the faith? Could tradition and innovation coexist? These were no longer academic questions, they were matters of survival. In 323 BCE, at the zenith of his conquests, Alexander fell ill in Babylon. He died childless at 32, and his empire fractured among rival generals, the Diadochi. Without a clear successor, Alexander's generals carved up the empire. In this scramble for power, Jerusalem became a pawn between two mighty Hellenistic kingdoms, the Ptolemies of Egypt and the Seleucids of Syria. At first, Judea fell under Ptolemaic control. For nearly a century, Jewish life remained relatively stable. Greek language and culture spread, but religious autonomy was largely respected. Taxes were heavy, but Jerusalem thrived. A delicate balance was maintained. Yet independence brought new complexities. The Hasmonean kings adopted Hellenistic titles and customs. They built palaces and fortresses in Greek style. They employed mercenaries. Traditionalists mourned the fusion of priesthood and kingship. Pragmatists hailed the survival of Jewish autonomy. Sectarian divides deepened, but festivals thrived, scholarship advanced, and the temple once ag. For nearly a century, Jerusalem enjoyed relative peace. The high priesthood remained the center of authority, while Greek merchants and settlers established footholds along the coast. The Ptolemies encouraged scholarship and debate. Libraries blossomed in port cities like Joppa. Jewish students traveled to Alexandria, absorbing both Torah and Aristotle. Yet beneath this veneer of stability, the cultural transformation deepened. The question whispered through synagogues and academies alike: could the soul of Israel survive the pull of Athens? One of the Ptolemies' most unexpected legacies was the translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, the creation of the Septuagint. Tradition holds that 70 or 72 elders worked in Alexandria to render the Torah into Koine, the common Greek tongue. For diaspora Jews who no longer spoke Hebrew fluently, the Septuagint was a lifeline and a bold statement. Judaism could survive translation, could speak in the language of the empire without losing its sacred essence. The Septuagint would shape not only Judaism, but also nascent Christianity, as early apostles would later quote from its pages when preaching to Greek-speaking audiences across the Mediterranean. Around 200 BCE, the delicate balance shifted. Antiochus III the Great seized Judea from Ptolemaic control, bringing Jerusalem under Seleucid rule. Initially, Antiochus respected Jewish customs, but constant wars with Rome drained his treasury. Corruption seeped into the temple hierarchy as ambitious priests vied for power, offering bribes to secure the high priesthood. By 175 BCE, Jason, a Hellenized Jew, bought the office, built a gymnasium near the temple, and tried to transform Jerusalem into a miniature Antioch. Young men competed nude in Greek games. Many even underwent painful surgeries to reverse their circumcision, a mark of covenant shame in Greek eyes. To the traditionalists, it was a creeping apostasy, the covenant dissolving not by sword, but by seduction. When Antiochus IV Epiphanes came to power, he pursued a brutal policy of enforced Hellenization. Let there be one culture, one king, one language seemed to be his creed. In 168 BCE, after disturbances in Jerusalem, he unleashed terror. In 167 BCE, Judaism itself was outlawed, the Sabbath was banned, circumcision was punishable by death, Torah scrolls were confiscated and burned, and in an ultimate outrage, Antiochus erected an altar to Zeus inside the very temple of God. Swine's blood was spilled on the sacred altar. The ancient faith that had survived Babylonian exile now faced total annihilation. But the flame of faith was not extinguished. In the village of Modiin, an elderly priest named Mattathias refused to offer pagan sacrifice. He slew the king's envoy and fled to the hills with his sons, among them Judah Maccabee, soon to be known as the Hammer. Over the next 3 years, Judah led a guerrilla war of astonishing daring. Farmers became fighters, scholars wielded swords. They ambushed Seleucid convoys, toppled siege engines, and in 164 BCE stormed Jerusalem. They cleansed the defiled temple, rebuilt the altar, and rekindled the sacred menorah. One small cruse of pure oil, enough for a single night, burned for 8, and thus was born Hanukkah, a festival of light, rededication, and enduring faith. Victory birthed a new era, the Hasmonean dynasty. Under Simon, Jonathan, and John Hyrcanus, Judea expanded its borders, minted its own silver coins, and for the first time since the days of David and Solomon, stood as an independent kingdom. Ain became the heartbeat of the nation. Though the Maccabees fought fiercely to defend Jewish traditions, Greek influence never truly vanished. Instead, it was transformed. Philosophers like Philo of Alexandria wove Platonic thought into Jewish theology. The Sanhedrin, Judaism's supreme court, adopted Greek methods of legal debate. Even synagogue architecture mirrored Greek civic halls with public readings and structured assemblies. Greek became, alongside Hebrew and Aramaic, a language of Jewish law and learning. Hellenism, once seen as an existential threat, became an invisible scaffold supporting Jewish resilience across continents. Without Alexander's cultural revolution, Judaism might have remained a local, tribal religion. Because of it, Judaism became a world-shaping force, sowing seeds that would later blossom into Christianity and Islam. Alexander's meeting with Jerusalem was fleeting, but the consequences echoed through centuries. The city was spared from destruction, but not from transformation. Some Jews resisted, others adapted, some perished, many survived, and redefined survival itself. Though the era of classical prophecy, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, had ended centuries before, Jews during the Hellenistic period reinterpreted the ancient texts, finding in them new hope and guidance. Books like Daniel voiced dreams of redemption, speaking to the fears and aspirations of a people grappling with foreign dominion. So, was the Greek invasion a threat or a blessing? Both. It nearly extinguished temple worship under Antiochus, yet the persecutions it provoked forged a resilient identity. It introduced philosophies that could have diluted covenantal particularism, yet Judaism absorbed and transformed them, emerging richer in law, ethics, and narrative. It spread Hebrew scripture in a new tongue, enabling diasporic communities and seeding the ground for Christianity's rise. In our next episode, part 6 of Jerusalem series, we will follow the ironclad legions of Rome as they march into the Levant, transforming Judea's political landscape and reshaping its religious life in ways that still reverberate today. From Pompey's entry through the broken gates to Herod's grand rebuilding, we'll trace how Roman rule tested the legacy of both Persian and Greek dominion, and how Jewish faith endured under an empire that demanded loyalty above all else. Stay tuned as the story of Jerusalem's survival moves from the shadow of Greek phalanxes into the glare of Roman eagles. If this journey illuminated forgotten crossroads of history, help us keep the flame alive. Like, subscribe, and share Darvesh Chronicles. In the comments, tell us, did Hellenism refine Judaism or threaten its survival? Your voice continues a conversation that began 23 centuries ago. Until our next voyage, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep exploring the stories that shape our world. Until next time, may peace and blessings be upon you.